You're listening to the Fezcast, the Saracens fans podcast, bringing you the independent and unhinged views of the voices in our heads, as well as those of our special guests. To get in touch with us, find the Fezcast on social media and listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube and more. Thanks for tuning in and enjoy this week's show.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time you are listening to our next edition of the Fezcast. And joining me tonight is Duncan, 2 Jets. He's not somewhere in Europe enjoying himself, although you are going away at some point, aren't you? Because you didn't believe that Saracens men could get to the final, did you?
That's right. So I booked a Eurotunnel crossing at exactly the same time as the final kicks off, guaranteeing that we'll get there.
Yeah, and by the time we get to France, we'll be champions, obviously. Yeah, and then joining us as well is Matt. And hiya, Matt. I haven't spoken to you for a little while. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm good, mate. Yeah, I've booked my holiday for after the final. Never in doubt.
Well, that was one of the 3-word reviews, wasn't it? Never in doubt. And yeah, certainly we will be talking about that. First things first, though, Matt, obviously you listened to last week's show with 2 great interviews. One that Duncan did, one I did. Duncan's was with Joel Tompkins and I did with Marcus Street. I mean, did you enjoy those, Matt?
So good to listen to it twice. Yeah, no, it's great to hear from both of them, really. It was good to hear from Joel for a second time. Obviously very fascinated by a chat with Marcus Street. I think he's been our signing of the season, personally. And a magnificent moustache as well. And yeah, what a nice lad.
Yeah, he was a lovely lad. I did message him on Instagram to say, here's the link for the show last week. And he came straight back to me to say thanks. And it shows you they're not all sort of like hidden away, Duncan. Like, you know, sometimes you have to get the guys to do it. Marcus, as I said last week, just was absolutely dialed into the whole ethos of it, wasn't he?
I thought he was a fantastic speaker. And maybe he has grown into being that because his business requires him to speak to people and present himself, but he presented himself really well.
Perhaps we'll have another chat with him another time next season, maybe, as we go on with it. Before we go into the main bones of the show, though, also need to have a bit of a congratulations to Bernice. Big fan of Saracens, who was named this year as Supporter of the Season by the SSA, and a well-deserved award. I mean, I know Bernice has had her troubles with some hospital stuff that she's had to go through and a knee replacement and whatever. But also, those people who know Nigel and Roger Lyons, she's been a huge supporter. Roger has had his sufferings as well. You know, he's not been very well at all, but Bernice has been absolutely rock for them. And I remember when I ran the virtual London Marathon, when I did 10 laps of my local park and reservoir, she came all the way up from Hertfordshire to stand by the side of the road on a very miserable day in October and cheer me on. I mean, she's a person with a heart of gold who probably deserves the award, Matt.
Indeed, yeah. I mean, there's plenty of people like that around Saracens, and it's very nice that now on an annual basis we're recognising all of them one by one, hopefully, yeah. And yeah, many congratulations to Bernice. Thoroughly deserved, for sure.
The show today, we've got a bit of a full show, but not quite as full a show as last week. I'm impressed, Duncan, how you managed to edit it down to an hour and 42 minutes, because, I mean, at one point we were looking at it finishing just before we started recording this one.
Yeah, I think I managed to cut out 20 minutes and improve the quality, Jez. Make you sound even better than you did live.
It's an amazing talent you've got there of polishing turds to the extent that you do.
I wouldn't talk about Sam like that.
Yeah. Actually, he was quite impressed on WhatsApp today when he put up a picture of his dad. I presume it was his dad, him and Rhys Carey, and Rhys was looking a little bit surprised. I said, "Is that because he was wondering what the hell the Macho Man Randy Savage was doing at Stonex?" And I might post that photograph on the Fezcast just to see if for those of us who remember wrestling in the 80s and 90s in America, get the reference. But we're going to talk about, obviously, Exeter Chiefs next week and the game the men played against the Quins at Stonex on the weekend. But first, before that, we'll do the game for the women versus Loughborough Lightning in a pretty interesting weekend for the PWR Women's Rugby Tournament.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
Hello, this is Akina Gondwe of Saracens Women, and you're listening to the Fezcast, and we are both proudly sponsored by the Saracens Supporters Association. For a £10 annual subscription to the SSA, you'll get the chance to buy tickets for away matches, receive a regular newsletter, and an exclusive SSA badge. They also arrange pre-match gatherings and player-coach events. As well as sponsoring both me and the Fezcast, they also sponsor Louis Johnson from the men's team and the Saracens Foundation Track Club. Not bad for £10. You can join up at membermojo.co.uk/SSA. Enjoy the rest of this edition of the Fezcast, and I look forward to seeing you at Stonex. Come on, you Sarries.
This is the Fezcast.
Yeah, well, welcome back, everybody. The women came out. Was that the first game back? It was, wasn't it, after Six Nations and everything? And they hit the ground running, which, considering probably the result of the weekend came on Friday night when Ealing Trail Final. We'll discuss that first. Ealing Trail Finals beat Gloucester Hartpury. Gloucester Hartpury has sort of like had a bit of a tumultuous week, haven't they, Matt? Because the three of their big-name players, Sarah Beckett, Zoe Stratford and Tatiana Hurd, are all off up the M5 to Manchester to play for Sale Sharks next season. And then to get turned over by Ealing Trail Finals, it can't have been. Well, it's been a long time since Gloucester Hartpury have had a weekend that bad, really, isn't it, Matt?
Yeah, I haven't lost for a while, for sure. I mean, obviously those three players leaving Gloucester, moving to Sale, it's more a sign of, the good work that's going on at Sale and the investment that they're putting in than it says anything about Gloucester necessarily there. But yeah, they'll obviously there's big shoes to fill with all three of those disappearing. But yeah, the defeat to Trailfinders definitely came as a shock. Trailfinders over the last few years have really grown into the league, and you look at the team that they've got, they will do some damage, as they have done, and we've got them next week. So yeah, a bit of a shot across the bows for everyone there. But yeah, a fantastic result for them.
Can Ealing still qualify for the playoffs?
That got them into the top four, yeah, and all likelihood that they will play Gloucester again. But yeah, that's the top four done and dusted.
We'll talk about it when we come to the men, Duncan, about timing your run at the right time. And, it's all well and good being top at Christmas, but you don't necessarily mean that you win everything. As you look at Bath, who seem to be stuttering at the moment in the men's game, is this a sign that maybe Gloucester Hartpury are stuttering themselves? The weight of expectation may be a bit on top of them as well? Or is it just a case of their players are a little bit more rusty coming back from Six Nations duty than perhaps other teams were?
Next week will tell us, I think. I mean, we had a battering by them after the World Cup, which was probably a mindset thing that led us to be beaten so badly. But we certainly came back flying. So, yeah, next week will tell us whether Gloucester have got a problem with getting themselves motivated for the last game of the regular season. It's good that we came back in top gear and really put on an impressive display because, as you say, it's about momentum.
Let's start with some of the players. I mean, Paige Ferris gets a hat-trick and not even mentions in player of the match. Sydney Gregson gets 5 tries, gets mentioned in the player of the match, and then Zoe Harrison gets it. I mean, it's not many times you'll score 5 tries. Well, there's not many times you'll score 3 tries in the match and not get player of the match. Score 5, it's almost nailed on, isn't it? But, I mean, let's start with Zoe Harrison first of all. She had one of those games, didn't she? And it wasn't what she always does. We know what we get from Zoe. It's dead-eye dick from the tee. Qualities of bringing players in, creating gaps, seeing gaps, tactical kicking, the whole full gamut she gives us. But I think what typified her performance was the one turnover. I think it was on the prop or second row, wasn't it? Where was it? Hills Campion came through and she's taken to the ground and over the top of her, and it was like watching Marley Packer at her best.
Yeah, I mean, as you say, Zoe's all-round game has just come on over the last few years immeasurably, really. I mean, not that she was ever just a kicker, but obviously her strength for, God, must be pushing a decade now, has been that she was at one time practically the only person in the women's game that could kick. And that was the real strength she had. But everything else has now come along with it, where a lot of other players in the women's league are now kicking very well. Zoe's brought the rest of her game up to match her kicking. And yeah, she's absolutely outstanding. She's obviously England's main fly half. And the form that she was in the Six Nations has obviously continued in the league. And like you say, have two players scoring 8 tries between them and quite rightly not get the player of the match is quite something, isn't it? Sydney, I think, would probably admit herself that she was sort of the beneficiary of team tries on some of those 5 occasions. But yeah, you must be wondering what else you have to do.
I don't know whether it's since we called out certain commentators for not giving Zoe perhaps the plaudits that she deserved. And it's something we'll talk about when we speak about Marcus Street. There seemingly, people do listen to us, Duncan, because people have actually started to, or maybe they don't. I mean, maybe I'm just being a little bit egotistical there, but I mean, something's happened, isn't it? Because people are, one, recognising her, and two, bigging her up, big style, and quite rightly so.
Well, it's hard not to, isn't it? I mean, as Matt says, she's doing it for England. She's doing it for us. It's hard to miss her. Jackling tackle was great, but I tell you, Paige Ferris did that as well. And Paige Ferris was the player of the match for me. She did 3 tries, as you say, and they were really wonderful tries. And a Jackling tackle to be thrown in. Wasn't it great to see the women back, though? And everybody, really, after that first 15, 20 minutes, when Loughborough were really going for it, blew themselves out, and then it was just brilliant display, as we were seeing before the Six Nations break.
I think that's their super skill this season. Again, it's something that the men quite well as well, I think, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but they kind of like weather a storm. Teams are going to come out and try and get some points on the board early doors and then try and put Saracens under pressure. They were never under pressure. And a lot of that comes from, I mean, we'll be talking about backs, doing what backs do and scoring tries, but a lot of that came from a forward pack that started off the game and stayed in the arm wrestle and then got dominance as the game went on. And a particular part of the game that I felt went really well, especially considering Bryony's not our first choice hooker, would normally be May, and considering that what we got on the bench, Matt, is prop forwards who can play hooker, I thought the line out went superbly well. Now, a great deal of that is aided by the fact that you got Sophie de Goody playing at 8 the whole game, which moves Julia into the second row. We got line out operators, 3 or 4 line out operators now, that has made a huge difference to the effectiveness of that part of the game, Matt.
It has sometimes been a weak point for us over quite a few years. And to be honest, in a way, Bryony Field is actually a better line-out taker than May Campbell. It is probably the element of May's game that is the least developed out of all of it. So I don't know that it was ever going to go wrong on that front. But like you say, you've got the likes of Sophie de Goody and Julia Omakwali that are fantastic in the line-out. So yeah, real strength for us. Obviously, Bryony's got a huge part to play going into the end of the season. She will be probably our starting hooker for next week and the knockout phases. And like you say, coming off the bench, either a couple of fairly inexperienced players, Daisy Fitzgerald, who was nominally the hooker on the bench, but also the 2 props can play hooker. It'll be interesting to see how much of an impact they need to have going into the back end of the season. But yeah, definitely a big part for Bryony, and she started very well against Loughborough.
The other player I'm going to mention, because, I mean, she gets mentioned every week, because Marley Packer is, having that Indian summer. She's got herself a few kilos off, I think, and muscled up a little bit, but she's playing with a determination. And none more than when she got a yellow card, because, I mean, there's Marley Packer, 35 years old. She ain't going to take no crap off of no pup, is she? She's still got that dog in her. And that determination, and you don't take liberties with Marley Packer, do you? And I mean, she was kicking it as she came off. She knew she probably overacted a little bit, but it set a marker, didn't it, Duncan? And that's what you want from your gnarly open side.
Well, briefly, just on Julia Mackley, has she grown another foot? I mean, she was tall before. She's unbelievably tall now. I wonder with Marley, because she was on for, it was about the 73rd minute or something, wasn't it? I wonder whether she just fancied some time off at the end of the game, the way she went off giggling.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, it's something England did a little while ago, wasn't it? Where they, under the previous coaches, where they actually purposely went down to 14 against Wales, I think it was, just to see how they would cope and to make sure they could cope with. It's the interesting thing, isn't it? I mean, yeah, Marty probably did say, "Oh, I've had enough. If you don't want to bring me off, I'll just punch someone. They'll be all right." It was great, though, wasn't it? I mean, I think it was what it was an all-round performance, Matt, and that's important. Going forward, 3 more games. The team ethic is what's going to get us to that final and hopefully lifting that trophy at the end of the season.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's the way the league is structured and the way it has to be set up for lots of different reasons means that momentum's quite hard to come by. And obviously, with a period of a couple of months without a game for the majority of the players, that is going to be difficult to find. And the best thing we could have done was hit the ground running against Loughborough and done exactly that. So, yeah, roll on the next few weeks.
We mentioned Gloucester at the top. They've come back in, lost a lot of momentum. It's going to put doubts in their minds. 3 times champions, I don't think those doubts are going to be huge, but any little chink you can find in their armour, you're going to have to go for it and play on it. So, yeah, Eden next up. We've got to go into that game full hilt again, haven't we, Duncan?
Well, definitely. As we said last week, that they're really determined this season, I think. A couple of points. Apparently, Poppy Cleal wasn't available because she was working, pounding the street somewhere as a policewoman. So be interesting to see who's the starting number 8, her or Sophie de Goody, because, boy, getting Sophie de Goody out of any position's a bit difficult. And the other slight surprise for me was not to see Amelia McDougall put in at 9 to give her a few minutes there. Apparently she was playing scrum half in the under-20s she plays for England? So she's clearly capable. Tori Sellers was absolutely magnificent the whole game, I thought, but we were risking her by playing her the whole 80 minutes.
Is Liv Apps back soon? Because she's away doing 7s at the moment, isn't she?
I actually don't know what the plan is. I thought there was a chance that actually that was the last we've seen her at Saracens, but she may well be coming back.
Well, that's something to look forward to next week. That's on Sunday at 3:30.
Yeah.
And it's a home match, isn't it? So if you can get down to it, do so. The girls deserve and need your support to be down at Stonex. So let's make that a good crowd. We'll come back in a minute, though, and discuss playing against the club from Surrey in the first time for ages at the Stonex.
This is the Fezcast.
Well, welcome back, everybody, and let's talk about the team from Surrey coming up to North London. First time in ages at Stonex. I mean, pretty good week for North London, all told, really. I mean, you had Arsenal winning the league, but not winning the Champions Cup, and then you got Tottenham celebrating like lunatics because they got 17th in the Premier League, and I won't say anything more about that. But Saracens got the triple there with a win and an important win on the weekend. Shame Tiggers couldn't help us out the following day, Matt, but all we can do is what we can do, isn't it? And at the end of the day, we beat Quins on the weekend, which is important. First things first, though, Matt. I mean, there's no point asking Duncan because he's up with the prawn sandwich brigade, so he'll be well looked after. What was the beer situation like down where you were? Because there's a few people who have been complaining that they had about 2 kids on, because most of them were obviously at the Emirates waiting for Arsenal to come back from Budapest, and they run out of beer pretty rapidly. Are the complaints I've been hearing on social media justified?
I think that was the prawn sandwich seats on the other side of the ground, Duncan, rather than me and the plebs. It's a lesson for everyone. If you want your beer, get it with the rabble.
I get my beer from the container in the corner, but I was there with my wife, so I was on my best behaviour and not drinking a lot of it.
Maybe it was me that actually ran it dry. I don't know.
It was hot enough for all the beer to get drunk dry.
Yeah, I think the line for the ice cream van did a lap of the athletics track, didn't it? So.
Something that we have mentioned before on the festival. I think it's important because a few people in the free word reviews as well mentioned it as well. And clearly, it's not Saracens' fault per se, is it? It's the people they have come in and do it. And I don't know the complete setup because business things like that bore me silly, Duncan. So I'll hand over to someone like you who's been involved in running sports clubs in the past. I mean, you do tend to franchise it all out, and you're at the beholden of those guys to get it right. And you'd think on a hot sunny day, when you've got your local rivals coming up, you would throw every resource at it, and perhaps they didn't.
Yeah, I don't know why they ran out of beer in the West Stand. I think in general, they do pretty well. You are always going to have queues at half time. You just cannot staff it up to serve everybody in one go. But overall, they've got a lot of outlets and there's a lot of places to go. And yeah, you can have a queue sometimes, but in general, it's not too bad. So it just sounds like a cock-up.
Watching on the game, if you'd start your queuing at about 22 minutes of the first half, wouldn't have mattered if you hadn't got back to about the 17th minute of the second half, would it? Because there wasn't a great deal that happened, or a huge amount that happened. It was pretty good play. There wasn't like scoring tries. What did you think of the game? Because I know that I watched on the television and I was quite happy with the performance. Duncan's mentioned the conditions. I think the conditions were horrendous. And, when I spoke to Marcus in the week and they'd just come off the training paddock and in like 32 degrees heat, it wasn't quite that heat, but that's got to have something to it. He looks at those players and you could see. Was it Jamie George at one point picked up on Luke Pearce's microphone where Luke Pearce was trying to get the Quins guys off, but he said, "We all need a drink, mate."
It was a warm day, for sure. But I mean, in a way, there were times when it almost felt like they were playing as if it was belting down with rain and -5. The handling from both teams at sometimes was pretty bad. And the sort of, you mentioned that spell, sort of 20 minutes at the end of the first half and 20 minutes at the start of the second half. I lost count of the amount of times there was a howl, particularly from everyone around me in the south stand, when somebody just threw a no-look pass behind them to nobody and led to the ball being turned over 3 or 4 times towards the end of the first half. Jamie being one of them, which he threw a no-look pass, then looked back at it and looked incredibly confused when he couldn't find any of his own teammates because they were all now 20 yards behind him having to chase back because Quins had picked up the ball. It was quite a moment. But yeah, one of those days, neither team, I think, played brilliantly well. The Harlequins haven't been playing particularly well all season anyway. We weren't great. We did enough. I think that's the short summary after my waffle.
I get what you're saying. I mean, Duncan, for me, I thought it was just a proper performance and it was a proper rugby union performance. And it's quite interesting. I read an article, I think it was in the Times, I can't remember which one it was now, but Peter Jackson has written an article bemoaning the amount of tries that are being scored in Premiership rugby matches and saying it's to the detriment of the game, which sounds a little bit counterintuitive, but I kind of see his point because that was, when I say proper rugby, it was a bit of a throwback, wasn't it? It wasn't 2 attacks just saying, well, we're going to, like we've been discussing for weeks and weeks and weeks, the way the game's going is that you just have to score more tries than the opposition. And if that means you're scoring 14 tries to 11, so be it. This game was never that. But Saracens put in an 80-minute performance. Whilst it wasn't perhaps a Rolls-Royce performance, it was a bit more of a sort of like a BMW Mercedes one that they did enough and got the 2 tries at the end in a bonkers last 5 minutes that got them the bonus point that he needed.
Yeah, we should talk about the last 4 minutes, in fact, as an item on its own. I thought for 25 minutes we were really good, like really good. Fergus Burke was doing the things that we come to expect from him now, really quick breaks. First one's a penalty try. The second try we scored was a magnificent team try where, you had all that passing behind, but it was going to a man, etc. Max Malins, through some very good defensive work from a Quins player, didn't manage to score what would also have been a first-class try, and everything was really, really good. And then I really think the weather came into play. It was the slowest line-outs I've ever seen it in any game anywhere. Both teams moving at a snail's pace to come to the line-outs, and you couldn't blame them. People, including Jamie George, going down, clutching their heads with, I bet, no sign of any bump on the head going, just so that everybody could get a drink. And the game was going on a long time at a very slow pace. And I think that, we were dropping the ball for a couple of reasons. A, I suspect we were mentally and physically drained. And secondly, do you remember that game in Philadelphia between us and Newcastle? And I can tell you, I've played in Philadelphia and it is really hot, a bit like Saturday there all the time. And your hands sweat, and hands were sweating, and they probably weren't on a rainy day. They'd expect to have to be more careful with the ball. They probably expected less, that the ball's going to slip out of their hands because, A, everybody else's sweat is on the ball and they've got sweaty hands. And it was noticeable that things started to turn round for us when the fresh legs, the fresh bodies and the fresh heads came on. And that's when the game picked up again, when that exhaustion was swapped out.
I also think as well there's an added factor in there, and it was a hugely emotional day because it was Mark McCall's last game at Stonex as director of rugby. And I think there was an element of, for Saracens, they went out onto that field, one, wanting to put on a show for Smalley because he deserves it. Two, everybody expecting us to put on a show because it's for Smalley and he deserved it. But also because we were desperate to get that bonus point, and I think we went out in that first half with the intention of getting that bonus point as soon as they possibly could, and perhaps pushed the game too far too quickly. And, you know, we got those 2 tries, great penalty try, the Fergus Burke break. Tom Willis as well was just battering people out like he does all over the place. I just think we tried too hard to put on a performance and 2, get that bonus point try as early as we possibly could. And then, as Duncan says, when some calmer heads come on, Ivan Van Zyl, Owen Farrell, who've come a little bit of criticism, but I think they calmed things down and did what Saracens always used to do. You remember the final in 2019 when, you know, I thought 10 minutes from the end we were never going to win it. Calm heads, got the game by the scruff of the neck, and we suddenly won. And we did that again, I think, on Saturday, where we turned around and said, do you know what? If we just go through our processes, we're going to get those 2 tries. And that's what we did. And we suddenly, Tompkins try that sparked it all. That sparked that last 4 minutes. Owen Farrell's break, the offload, and Ollie Hartley's offload, which was out of this world, to Nick Tompkins. We'd been searching for that for 60 minutes and finally found it, and it was just through calmness as opposed to headless chickenness that perhaps we were suffering from earlier on in the game, Matt.
I think you asked me a question 5 minutes ago. I'm buggered if I can remember what it is. Right. Where do I start with that bit? Well, I as Duncan said, the first 15, 20 minutes we came out flying, really. But I agree with you. I think the sort of the weight of the game, a little bit, the weight of the occasion was there. It quite rightly wasn't, certainly not at the ground, referenced too much in the build-up. Around the ground was all left until afterwards, which was good. But yeah, I mean, we've seen over the last few seasons when there's been a big occasion like that, like the likes of Owen and the Vunipolas and things moving on, we actually tend to be rubbish. So it's quite nice to have a game where that didn't necessarily happen. And look, we there was only a little period of the game where we looked like we might snatch defeat from the jaws of victory when Quins was sort of pushing on and within a score, and Owen missed the penalty that was from a fair way out. Other than that, it was quite comfortable. Maybe I'm just miserable, but I feel like we're making a bit too much of how hot it was. We play rugby in June every year. We play the final in June every year. It's usually mid-20s. It was about 27 at the weekend. It wasn't 35-degree heat. It wasn't some of the other bits that we've seen. I think there's probably a little bit too much being made of it. Definitely a factor, though. And yet, the substitutions that were made, we've criticised subs this year quite a lot. They've been made in a bit of a formula. They've been made, they feel like they're at the same time all the time. It's the same players for the same players, and they're being made for the sake of being made. They were done very, very cleverly. Like you say, Ivan and Owen coming on just to settle things down, just to play the territory game. We didn't have an awful lot of the ball for a lot of the game. There were periods of time where Quins had the ball for 10, 15 minutes at a time, it seemed. And that changed when Ivan and Owen came on. Tom Willis, as you mentioned, was all over the place all game, doing what he does best. But after about 50 minutes, he was dead on his feet. Took a little bit longer to bring him off. But when Nathan Mitchellow came on, he injected plenty as well. And he's had a huge part to play in the back end of this season. So yeah, I thought he was a massive factor. But yeah, I've rambled enough to counter Jez and I've forgotten entirely what point I was making. So that's exactly what I was aiming for. There we go.
It's a nice point you make about Nathan, though. I mean, I think, Alfie Barbary coming to Saracens. It was an interesting interview he did on, was it The Good, the Bad and the Rugby, where he was talking about why he's leaving Bath. And he said he didn't really want to leave Bath, but he wasn't performing to the levels that Bath wanted him to. So Nathan Miklow's sticking his hand in the air this season, Duncan, and saying, Alfie, you're going to come here, but I can do Tom Willis things as well. And he was doing Tom Willis things.
He's a vital player in this run-in. And he's at an age where we'll probably see him broader next season because at his age, the hours in the gym build up, don't they? It's interesting, Matt, that you don't think it was that hot. It was 27, but it felt a lot hotter to me. And I think it's worth remembering that although players hate that pitch, I love it in the winter. At this time of year, the heat gets magnified because it's black rubber and it's really, really hot on that black surface.
It's not that I don't think it was hot. But, okay, it's maybe a week or two ahead of what it normally is, but it does this every year.
Yeah.
I do think, and, again, it's something that Marcus referenced when I spoke to him the week before, that not necessarily game day where it's affected you, but if you've had a whole week of training, I know that from doing my running. I've been out 3 or 4 times in that heat, and it drains you when you train in that heat. So I don't know how hard they would have run them during training, but I know on the Monday when I spoke to Marcus, they all out at training and it was seriously hot. It's been shown that it's not specifically Saracens themselves who suffer with that. I don't think any team other than perhaps Newcastle going back against Sale have particularly hugely covered themselves in glory this week.
No, that's probably more to the point. I work outdoors. I found it as well. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday was pretty savage. And it cooled down from there. But like you say, that sort of lead up into the week is going to be a factor. So, yeah, I'd get that. But I just think on the day, probably a bit too much made of it. I just think both teams weren't quite 100%. And Quins aren't generally 100% unless they're playing us. So it was nice for that not to happen.
Well, next week it'll be 19 degrees and we'll come on to that later. So it won't be a factor, which is a good thing. But just going back to one of your points earlier, Jez, with 4 minutes to go, we were just 2 tries to 1 up. With 4 minutes to go. And then in that 4 minutes, I think there was 3 tries scored. Absolutely bonkers last 4 minutes. And you talk about them being overeager to score the bonus point tries. I watched the highlights back today and Mark McCall was doing his nut. Because I don't know if you remember, Owen Farrell seemed to run the clock down when he was taking the conversion after Nick Tompkins' try. And then when they scored their try, we were ambling back to the halfway line again. And Mark McCall was right to be doing his nut because that bonus point has made all the difference for next week.
That's quite interesting, though, when you talk about the Quins try. That was the best try we've ever given away in the history of Premiership Rugby, because Blatz pulled out in commentary and said the last thing we wanted at that point in time was them just to pick and go.
Yeah.
For them to score that try then, giving us 10 seconds to restart the game and go again, the fact that they scored the try and it gave us the opportunity to get that 4th bonus point, which is where I think cool, calm heads came into play.
I mean, our defence for that try was horrific. So I really hope there is something in that because that was awful. But there was a couple of times we kind of made reference to 2023 when we were winning games out of nowhere. And there were a couple of those games. I remember being at the Stonex and us being 15 points down, I think it was, to Northampton. And there was just something in the crowd, something in the way the players were reacting. Just remember standing there with my dad, 15 points down with 20 minutes to go and going, we're winning this. And thinking, what on earth has made me say that? And lo and behold, we did. But there was, for some reason, we both sort of stood there and went, we've got 20 seconds to go. Not really a lot's happening, but we are going to score this try. There was just something about the way it was going that we just thought it was happening. And obviously, as soon as we picked up a penalty and it was remotely kickable towards the corner, it was almost like you could have turned around and left the ground at that point because you knew what was going to happen. Sometimes you just get that feeling.
Which is impressive because it was Theo down with the ball in his hands for that line-out.
Yeah.
And Theo, under pressure at times, he's got dartitis and he's got the yips on occasion. But he nailed it, absolutely nailed it. And well done to Theo for that. I mean, it was textbook, wasn't it? everybody thought it was going to Marrow, and then Bush were over. And yeah, there was an air of inevitability about it, Duncan.
Well, I wasn't feeling it. I'm so glad that Matt was. You're having a lot better time than I was, because I really wasn't. But boy, this club does this kind of thing sometimes, doesn't it? You've had, as you say, a relatively hit and miss game apart from the first 20 minutes. And then you get a finish like that. And how many times have we been down there and you get something extraordinary like that? As I say, it was a vital, vital bonus point. That bonus point means that next week, all we got to do is win. Whereas without that bonus point, we would have had to have won and prevented Exeter getting bonus points. So it's made all the difference.
Now, I want to mention 4 players. The first player I want to talk about is Marcus Street, because we had Marcus on last week, and, obviously chatting to me means the following week you have a spectacularly good game. It just happens. I mean, I remember Theo Dunn, we interviewed him before the final that time, and he's putting kicks down the field and we're scoring tries for fun and everything. I seem to have this Svengali-like ability when I speak to people. I might be wrong, Matt. But Marcus was pulled out by David Flatman. David Flatman was talking him up, and we said to Marcus last week, surely he's got to be England's. I can't think of too many better English qualified tight head props at the moment. Joe Hayes is obviously the man in possession, but Marcus has got to be there or thereabouts. And I think there was one scrum he got where Luke Pearce picked him correctly for going too long. But then last week he talked about what he does at breakdowns and what he enjoys doing at breakdowns. And he did it every breakdown. He hit those rocks and he was clearing people out and ensuring we got good, clean, quick ball, Matt.
Your interview approach is thankfully different from mine of our first season, where I interviewed 3 players for the women's team who all then promptly left. So that's quite good.
And Duncan interviews people who go on and coach other teams, I mean.
I mentioned him earlier on. I think he's definitely been our signing of the season for me. He kept Marco Riccioni on the bench for quite a while. And yeah, I think actually when we were talking about Six Nations squads, I know there were quite a lot of injuries. He was probably only 1 or 2 away. He was mentioned in the sort of long list of who on earth are we going to call up then. I think potentially he's probably still quite a way off from England reckoning. His age probably works against him. I think they'll take a couple of wise old heads and a couple of younger ones to come through in that respect. But he's certainly had a fantastic season for us. And we'd resolved some scrum problems last season with Rob Webber coming, and I think Marcus Street has taken it to that next level. I think certainly towards the start of the game, Luke Pearce has a funny habit of holding his arm out at every scrum, whether or not he's giving a penalty or just telling the scrum half to play the ball. So it was a little bit confusing whether or not he was giving an advantage sometimes. But I think we did actually pick up, certainly in the first 5 scrums, I think it was 3 penalties.
That brings me to the other side, Duncan, Moroni Maui, who I thought had a really pretty solid game. We've already talked about the heat and everything. To be a man of 23 stone or whatever and to put in a 50-minute performance, or a couple of cover tackles he put in that were fantastic. He got a turnover, I'm sure. It's not just one side scrummaging well, it's both sides have got to scrummage well. And I think Moroni did a fantastic job. It kept Big Red Reece Carey out of the sun, which is, because the last thing you want is a big ginger prop going down with sunburn, is it?
That's it. Who do you start, the big ginger bloke or the big Fijian bloke in the sun?
No, he had a great game. And another one picked out by David Flatman. It's good to have David Flatman, isn't it? Because most commentators say, oh, well, I don't know anything about what's going on in the scrum, which is a bit of a cop-out. If you're in that job, you should blinking well learn. But he really knows what he's on about, and it's great to get his insight. And he was bigging Irone Maui up properly, as he should have done.
South African guy coming in after his heart attack next year. He looks another solid old lump. Clearly something where, as Marcus said last week, you get building block everybody else can work off, and that comes from your front row. And it's to be something that we've concentrated on and got right.
Yeah, we were having a debate about this South African during the week, weren't we? My theory was that after getting an overweight Australian, Will Skelton, into shape, and then getting an overweight Welshman, Rhys Carey really into shape. They said, give us a proper challenge. So they're giving him an overweight South African with a heart condition. So we'll see what they do there. But, I mean, there's absolutely no question he wouldn't be playing if there was any problem with that ticker. So it's going to be, I suspect they'll do a really good job on him. But, hell, careful, a lot of competition in the front line now, isn't there?
5 years ago, you wouldn't have thought that Alec would still be there at the club, but he's done everything right, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's actually one of the longest-serving players at the club now, Alec Cleary, which is quite a thing. The only surviving member of the team from that weird little period where we signed several players through COVID and into the Championship. He's the only one left. So yeah, I think it is something like 6 tight heads we've got now. It was obviously when Jermaine Ainsley, that contract was torn up for various reasons. It is a little bit like they've gone, we're not entirely sure of a solution to this, therefore we're just going to re-sign absolutely everyone and figure out who the backup is to Marcus Street later, basically. I think that strength in depth is good for us. We've had several seasons where we've signed 42-year-old tight heads on emergency loans and all sorts of things. So just having a few of them around the club to start with is going to be good.
Yeah, we obviously want a lot. I mean, Brendan Ventnor rang up Harvey Beaton personally to persuade him not to sign for Newcastle. And we've got Phil Brantingham, remember, coming back. He's no slouch.
Wrong side, but there you go.
Wrong side. No, but I'm just talking about the front row in general.
To be honest, that's the real point, is that it's kind of lopsided. You look at this season, Rhys Carey and Aroni Marwi have played every single Premiership minute bar about 2 when we brought on our academy prop, whose name I forget. Phil Brantingham hasn't played at all, apart from a couple of games in the Cup. And at the moment, it's pretty much the same for next season. It's those 3 plus the academy guys. And meanwhile, at tight head, we've got an entire coach full of them.
To be fair, 3 tight heads could fill up a 54-seater coach. Yeah. Let's move out into the backs, though, and have a chat about the backs. And I want to focus on the good. And I think there were 2 players who were exceptionally good on the weekend. I'm going to leave Duncan's grandson, Ollie, to last. Tobias Elliott, he's come back after a long break from injury and has hit the ground running very, very quickly. And again, they picked it up in commentary. Kicks that we defended. Normally, you would expect the fullback to come and claim those. But Max Malins was quite happy hanging back and allowing both Noah Kalori and Tobias Elliott to be running backwards to take those kicks as they come over their shoulders. And pretty much all of the time, there wasn't too much went down Noah's neck, because I think people aren't going to kick to Noah because they realise how good he is. So they tried to exploit Tobias Elliott, and Tobias just stood up to every challenge that was given to him. It also works, obviously, then when you've got Max Malins hanging back, if you don't get the catch clean, and it's going to bounce back because that's the way you're facing. And Max, on a couple of occasions, was able to clear up those situations and make attacking ball off of it because, he is beginning to play a little bit like Goody, isn't he?
It was the first 10, maybe 15 minutes of the game with the one positive comment I had to make on our WhatsApp group was it seems like there's 5 Tobias Elliott's on the pitch. He was having one of those games where he was everywhere. He was jackling, he was making high balls in attack and defence. And yeah, Noah Kalori had a quiet game by his lofty standards, but like you say, that's partly just him settling into it. Other teams are starting to figure out what his strengths are, and they find ways of getting him out of the game. But it just meant that Tobias stepped up even more, and he was fantastic. And like you say, Max as well, playing in that slightly different style to what we saw at the start of the season, where he's learned he's got hands and can catch a ball. He had another solid game. So yeah, definitely the period where we got ahead in that first 15, 20 minutes, the back 3, including Noah Kalori, I think were instrumental in that.
Obviously, Tobias got player of the match, which has been unusual this season, Duncan, because normally you just give it to Tom Willis because Tom puts in games, and if it's not Tom Willis, it's Ben Earl, but it's because they play at a high standard. But Tobias, as Matt said, was absolutely everywhere the whole game, 80 minutes. He put in a big, big performance.
But for Tobias Elliott, then Tom Willis probably would have been man of the match again, wouldn't he? He just had another barnstorming game. But for an injury to Roti Shegan, Tobias Elliott probably wouldn't have started. But what a performance he put in. Going to be interesting next season if Elliot Daly is back from injury, because Max Malins has got this fantastic ability to be in the right place at the right time at the moment, especially getting on the end of stuff coming from Fergus Burke. He's really having a golden spell at the moment. And there's a great case to say that if he's not available at full-back, then next in the line should be Tobias Elliott, because he's a blinking good full-back as well.
Where does that leave Elliott Daly next season? But that's something for next season to worry about. What I will say is that, Max Malins, he's like a Gary Lineker almost, isn't he, of rugby union at the moment, in so much as that Gary Lineker scored most of his goals from about 3 inches out. And Max Malins just does have that uncanny knack of appearing at the right time. And when you've got Noah Kalori going for try-scoring record, and Bernal was listening to Max Malins inside of it, because if he'd put Noah was going in on that one there, wasn't he? But I mean, he put Max in, and for a man who we're saying bemoans a little bit of pace, the first couple of yards are in that top 2 inches, aren't they, Matt?
They are, yeah. No, it's good to see that Max is back in some form, or like we said, playing in a way that works for someone who's come back from a very serious injury and has probably lost a yard of pace. Although he'd still beat me in a sprint, but
I think I would as well, Matt. To be perfectly honest with you,
at the moment, yeah, I've smashed my hamstring to bits. So yeah,
you beat me.
I think I should have a race with Roti and see whose hamstring goes first.
The other player, though, obviously to mention is Duncan's favourite, Ollie Hartley, and I'm going to mention him in tandem actually with Nick Tompkins, because let's talk about them defensively first of all. Nick Tompkins, Ollie Hartley is a bit like watching, for those of us old enough to remember, Frank Bunce and Walter Little for the All Blacks. That basically was a black wall. Nick Tompkins and Ollie Hartley in that game, when Quins were getting on top, a lot of why Quins were dropping balls was when they were being presented by Ollie Hartley and Nick Tompkins in tandem hitting them. And they had great line speed. And there was the one hit that Ollie put in on, was it the set? I can't remember. It was the centre of the open side he came through, but he just absolutely cut him in half, didn't he? And had him for breakfast, Duncan.
Yeah. I mean, I think Nick Tompkins clearly is benefiting from Ollie Hartley, and he's brought that thing to the team that we needed, which is a really big, fast, direct number 12, who's not just limited to that. And we saw, was it against Bristol 2 weeks ago? I forget who we were playing. That step that he did, that Fergus Burke said he didn't know he had it in him. And now, as you say, that offload, he's just direct and fast, but with really good flourishes to his game.
In attack, you're right. He's got vision around him that we jokingly turned around the other week and said, we spent 20 odd years trying to find the new Philippe Seller as opposed to replacing Brad Barrett. But Yannick Yozion, a French centre of years gone by, who had that ability to break tackles and offload out of tackles, spot gaps and go into gaps. And Ollie's got all of those attributes, hasn't he?
He has, yeah. And it says an awful lot. I mean, yes, I know there's still a rumour flying around about another centre potentially coming in, but when you look at the makeup of the squad that we know about for next season, certainly with Alex Lazowski leaving, and Sam Spink going as well, although we never really saw Sam Spink playing for us too much. We haven't made a direct replacement in the squad at centre. So Ollie's standing purely over the course of the last year or so has risen to that point where they've got confidence in him to go, no, we don't need to bring in another 12 or 13 of first team level. So I know he did have a few injury issues. I'm just amazed that we didn't see Ollie Hartley play a Premiership game until, pretty much until post Six Nations. Someone needs to tell me that he was injured for half the season, because otherwise I think it's a real failing of the coaching staff. And that's the nicest thing I can say about how Ollie's played over the last few weeks.
Let's put it in the positive way. Owen Farrell has now found his place in the team, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Which is to come on when Fergus Burke has lost his pace because he's a bit worn out, and then shore things up at the end of the game and guide us home. When we were overplaying Owen, whether it was at 10 or 12, I suspect he was crowding out other players. In terms of replacements as well, somebody that we haven't seen playing at 13, but we know trains at 13 is Angus Hall. And with the number of full-backs and wingers that we've got, I suspect we'll see more of him at 13 next season.
Talking about Elliot Daly,
Yeah.
we've got so many young wingers coming through, having Daly around to slot into that 13 shirt as well.
Yeah.
It does, we are still maybe slightly short at 12 because I think we are seeing that Nick Tompkins is twice the player in the 13 shirt than he is in the 12 shirt. But yeah, Ollie should be the first name on the team sheet at the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, indeed, he should be, yeah. And I can imagine Elliot Daly with his vision that perhaps Nick Tompkins doesn't have as an attacking 13, that could cause people throughout the Premiership to have kittens next season. Let's stop it there, have a break, and then we'll come back and discuss, the showdown at Sandy Park.
Hi, this is Petrus Duplessis, and you are listening to the Fezcast.
This is the Fezcast.
Welcome back, everybody, to our final little bit of this week's Fezcast. And yeah, we've got something to look forward to on the weekend. Saturday, 3:15 p.m. kickoff. Winner takes all, the multi-million-dollar game, however you want to call it. It's gonna be an absolute bonanza down in the West Country, where we take on the Chiefs. Watched the game against Tigers on Sunday, and Chiefs looked very good. And Duncan, I'll let you pronounce his name, your favourite player for Exeter Chiefs.
Hey, Wasabi.
Yeah, there was Wasabi P, or whatever his name is. He's like Noah Glory, 2 years ahead of him, minimum. And I think if he hadn't had injuries, he would be better than what he perhaps is internationally. If he's fit and he gets his hands on the ball, he is absolutely frightening.
He's the number one winger in England at the moment, definitely. And as someone said on Twitter, Leicester, you had one job. You messed it up. But they did look good. But then, putting our performance in context, Quins beat them.
Yeah.
It's a crazy thing this season. Gloucester almost beat Saints on Friday. They came within a whisker of beating Saints. And, it just shows what a great league this is, that you're just 10%, 5% off it mentally. Anybody can beat you. It's been a great competition. Exeter, I think home advantage is going to be a huge issue next week for Exeter. They're a noisy crowd down there, and it's a great atmosphere in the ground when they're worked up. But then, we've thrived on that in the past, so who knows?
We go into that game as underdogs. There's no two ways about it. It's Exeter at home, coming off a big win against Leicester Tigers. They know what they've got to do. We know what we've got to do. If we go down to Exeter and we come away with a performance but we don't win, we're all going to turn around and say, well, it wasn't on that game that we lost this season. It was later on in the season when we weren't picking Ollie Hartley or whatever. Being underdogs is something I think every team enjoys, being the underdogs, where you're not given a chance and the pressure's off. Unlike Saturday, where we're saying, the occasion might have got to us, the fact that we had to get the 5 points put pressure on. This game, there's no pressure there because everybody would expect Exeter to win, and all we've got to do is go down there and throw everything at it and enjoy it. And if we lose 72-46, so be it. Or if we lose 12-9, but it's been one of those games where everybody's put everything out there, so be it. But I think it does give us the opportunity, doesn't it, Matt, to go in there as underdogs and play with the release valve off.
In an odd way, I think whether Exeter had won or lost against Leicester, we go into it as underdogs, because once we got the bonus point against Harlequins, what Exeter actually did is almost immaterial. Unless the game ends in a draw, basically. That's the only thing that changes. And yeah, I think it does suit us. It suited us 5 games ago, going into the rest of the season with taking the pressure off a little bit. Most of us, me included, thinking the season was slightly written off by that point, and to just change things, play some players differently, play some of the younger lads, play in a different style, and just see where it gets us. Turns out it's got us to essentially a quarter-final. And yeah, the fact that we've got here is fantastic. It doesn't paper over some of the cracks, let's be honest. But yeah, go into that game hopefully not feeling too much pressure. But like you say, once you get out there and you've got the Sandy Park crowd against you, I don't think you can help but feel pressure.
One thing we've always said is Smalley we trust. And the one thing we know from Smalley over 16 years or whatever it is of him being DOR, he knows how to get teams into playoffs. He knows how to get teams a ticket for the big dances at the end of the season, Duncan. And, this is his one last chance to throw all of that experience, all of that knowledge, all of that understanding of what it takes to get a team up ready for these knockout games. He's done it time and time and time again. We're going to ask him to go to the well a couple more times. He can do it, can't he, Duncan?
It would be interesting to really know, to have been in the camp, to know what extent it was small. It's going to be a huge part of it, and to what extent it's been the players. I mean, going back to that January night in Glasgow, when he stormed out of the dressing room and was pacing up and down the corridor in Glasgow with a look on his face that just said, I don't know what to do. And then, lo and behold, it was only a short while after that he announced his retirement, because he was probably at the lowest of lowest ebbs, thinking, I've run out of ideas. I don't know what to say to them. I don't know how to change the tactics. And then we come back and we play like we have over the last 5 weeks. As you say, a large part of it would be down to him, but also, I suspect, the senior players as well.
Yeah.
And the combination of the lot of them has performed a miracle.
They haven't. You haven't been on so often recently, Matt, but you've mentioned it there. I mean, Loxie and Duncan 6 weeks ago poo-pooed me when I said we could still do it. And a lot of the free word reviews are still saying, it's on. It's on. And belief is a huge thing. A boxing analogy. You got a puncher's chance, and it only takes one punch.
I'm also not going to hide from the fact that one of my few appearances on this show was essentially saying that, no, I don't trust Mark McCall anymore. And I think he is retiring a season or two too late. And regardless of what happens, I think, to be honest, I still stand by that. But the main point really is that you look at what he's done for this club. If he, like Duncan said, has walked into the room and gone, I don't really know what to say anymore, given everything that he has done, whether it's the rest of the coaching staff, the players, etc., they will have all rallied around that and not thrown him to the wolves. That could be a part of it. This could literally be everyone just doing it for the bloke that's led us for this long and put so much into the club. So, yeah, I can't sit here and go, in Mark McCall we trust, I'd be a massive hypocrite. But he's certainly doing something. And yeah, we've got a puncher's chance in this game. And the fact that we've even got one, full credit to all the coaching staff, all the players, everyone that's got us here, because I certainly didn't believe it was going to happen, but I'm damn happy that it has.
All I can say is I wish that Sam Emmett had been on here, because I think his reaction would have been something along the lines of when I said we can do it, he would have gone, hell yeah. Typically you two, just to add a dose of reality to it, I suppose.
You can't just forget everything that we were saying a few months ago. That would be very Arsenal fan TV of us. We've always said we're not going to do that.
I wonder whether those England players, the internationals, came back after the break. Like, right, the Six Nations are out of the way. It's the end of an era. Mark McCall is going, we've got to do something about this to make sure that it just doesn't go like a damp squib. And they've got everybody together. The coaches would have joined in and the whole team would have said, we can't allow it to end like this.
As you say, at Glasgow, he looked a beaten man. He looked dejected. He looked depressed. I remember my wife Sharon sitting there watching it and saying, that bloke shouldn't be there, because you've got a duty of care. Somebody at the club should have been looking at Mark and saying, are you all right, mate? And I think that's possibly what sparked the conversation. And indeed, probably the conversations he had on the phone with Brendan Venter, where he's turned around and Brendan said, are you all right, mate? And that's why Brendan's come back, because his buddy isn't all right. Having made that decision, sometimes, I know it. I left the job after 10 and a half years, a company I loved, because things had changed. And I was frightened to buggery about doing it. But the moment I did it, the weight came off my shoulders and I realised that I was making the right decision, and I'm happy because of it. And, it will come at some point in everybody's life. Retirement, I'm 55 next birthday, so I'm beginning to look down the barrel of retirement and what you do when you get to that age. And it's very, very difficult to imagine a life where you don't go to work at 8 o'clock in the morning and do what you do, what do you do with your time? And I think Mark's made the right decision for him. You're right, Matt, it might well be a little bit too late, but I don't think his legacy has been as badly diminished as perhaps it could have done if we hadn't come back and had this end of the season.
Yeah, I think it's good. Whatever happens against Exeter, he's Mark's going out on far more of a high than we thought he might be doing. Hopefully we go to Sandy Park. Whether we win or lose, hopefully it's a performance that's befitting of Mark's last league game. Hopefully not his last knockout game.
Where better place to go and what better smiles to rub off of people's faces. And let's be honest about it, Rob Baxter, one of his motivational tools will be to say that, we don't want Mark McCall to go out on that high in any way whatsoever. We want to destroy Saracens. And fair dues, because that's what you have to do to win games. And I'm going to criticise him for that. Regardless of what happens on the weekend, when the men's season ends, we want to put together a show in tribute to the man who is the greatest of all time as Premiership Rugby Director of Rugby. There is nobody who comes close to him in this generation, and he's up there with the likes of Jack Rowell, Dean Richards when he was at Leicester, all of these people who were great coaches. He's done it longer, better, and in such a way that's been brilliant. And regardless of what happens, should be remembered as the greatest DOR of all time, Duncan.
Yeah, without any doubt. I mean, you get some of the old mongers talking about certain things, which we won't go into. But even at the height of all that, we were winning the European trophy against French teams with far larger budgets and Leinster, who have an unimaginable budget in kind. He's the most successful DOR in England of all time, and that's incontestable.
You still got to coach that team. You see many teams have been built with Galacticos, as it were, and we did it for many years. And, had years where we seemingly had a different coach every year, and they couldn't make them gel. You still got to coach those players regardless of how much they cost and where they come from.
Yeah, and regardless of your views on, people are going to put asterisks against things, which is their favourite way of talking about it. That squad, that coaching team was primarily built from within, and Mark was the front and centre of it.
Well, what we want to do is in a future show, put together your sound bites in tribute to Mark McCall. We're not entirely certain how I'm not. I haven't got a clue because I can't do technical stuff to save my life. So it's going to be over to Duncan. We will find a way, and we'll put it out on Facebook, and we'll put it out on Twitter or wherever it is, and Instagram, how you can leave us voice notes that we can use in a future show. It's your memories of Mark McCall. And messages for Mark as part of that. So, Duncan, tell us more.
Well, I don't know whether I can tell you much more at the moment. We know we can do it because we've done a test. So look out for how you do it and please join in.
And talking about technical, Matt, over to you, because obviously you've not been on as much as you have this season because of things happening in your life. First of all, I'm going to say to you, Matt, you've done 6 seasons of this with me. We're the 2 original Muppets who started this. And you've been on every show because you always do the introduction bit, which, okay, you don't have to record it every week. I mean, you just do the lazy bit record at the start of the season. But, Matt, you're not going to put out much time in, although you're still going to be part of the team and everything. I will say here on air, thank you for everything you've done in the 6 seasons, because without you, I couldn't have got my idea out there. And I think probably likewise, you had the idea at the same time as me and we got together. Never knew each other before we started doing it. Bloody good friends through this, although we've had the odd disagreement, which I'm sure I'll have the same problem with Duncan going through in the future. But
you think you will have that problem? You don't think it's already happened?
But yeah, Matt, you've been an absolute legend on the Fezcast. But it does mean that if you're not doing as much of the technical help, we do need a bit of help that way, don't we?
We do, yeah. I mean, first thing, if anyone wants to re-record that intro, then please do. Because that's part of the reason I don't listen to the show very much, because I have to listen to myself every time. But yeah, look, I am going to, I say I'm going to step back a bit. I already did that at the start of this season, if anyone noticed. But yes, if anyone is remotely keen on doing things like editing a show or maybe a bit of social media or anything that goes into making a podcast that isn't just sitting here having a chat, because to be honest, this is the easy bit, please do get in touch with us. Because, after the 6 seasons, I'm not that enthusiastic about that side of things anymore. So if we want this thing to keep going, someone else needs to help us out, really. So, anyone that feels being a little bit generous, very much appreciated.
Yeah, if anybody has got any experience about using a software of any description to help put a show together, please let us know. You don't have to do it every week, but just being able to do it every now and then would be a huge help.
If you do want to help out, the one thing that will make sure you don't get helped out is if in your first sentence you say, I'd quite happily interview Maro Itoje.
Yeah. No, that's our job. I'm coming back to that.
I like it a Richard Hill interview when I finally nailed him down, so. Thanks, Matt, for everything. We'll be meeting up at the games and whatever. We'll have you on occasion when I haven't had enough disagreements with Duncan, so you can have an argument with me at some point. But we'll say thank you, everybody, for listening in to this week's show. Thank you, Duncan. Thank you, Matt, for your time. And as I say, thank you all to our listenership. We'll be back, hopefully, looking forward to final for both the men and the women. That'd be good, wouldn't it?
This is the Fezcast.